So the number of cases in India has gone upwards of 18,000, inching fast to that 20,000 mark. How does India stand in comparison to other countries in the world, both in terms of testing and contact tracing, and more importantly, what's going to happen post the 3rd of May? What is the lockdown easing plan, both for the centre and for the states? Joining us now is the CEO of the Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First, the big picture, Mr. Kant. India is at 18,000 cases plus. We'll probably hit 20,000 before the end of the week. While this number in absolute terms is less than compared to some of the developed countries, aren't you worried about the rate of daily increase of cases? How do we stack up vis-a-vis the rest of the world?
So it's important, Zaka, to understand that India still continues to experience very mild rise since the recorded first case in January 30th. Just to give you a comparison, and it's important if you look at it, to give you a perspective vis-a-vis other countries. And in week 12, since the first recorded case in each country, USA cases are about 39 times more than India's total cases. France cases are 7 times India's cases. Germany's cases are 9 times more India's cases. And Italy's cases are 11 times more. And therefore, the rise in cases in India is still modest compared to very steep hikes in other countries.
But tell me this, I mean, those countries have far fewer populations. They also have far better medical infrastructure than us. So would it be a fair comparison?
Yeah. So, important thing to point out is that if you look at this particular slide, at 13 cases per million, India's positive cases per million is at the lowest. Okay. And if you look at Spain, Spain's cases per million stand at the highest of about, close to 4,282 positive cases per million. And therefore, my perspective is that in terms of million, we are still one of the lowest cases per million population, and that is because of very early measures that India took in terms of travel, in terms of stringency, in terms of many things.
But tell me this, Mr. Kant. Is this because our rate of testing is low per million, or is it because we've genuinely done well to control the spread of this virus?
Yeah, so I'll come to testing and I'll explain that at length, because India has been testing all symptomatic cases, and I'll come to that. But if you see this, the 5-day moving average of daily cases, and this is important because we still are amongst the lowest in comparison to other countries, and as of 20th of April, that is yesterday, the moving average of USA is about 23 times that of India.
Okay.
And if you look at this particular, in terms of the global fatalities across the world, India accounts for only 0.4% of the global COVID-19 fatalities. And in sharp contrast to other countries, we've managed our fatalities much better compared to other countries. I mean, this is tragic, but this is important to understand this.
So come to the question that about the testing bit. Is it because of lower testing that we're having fewer cases?
No. So I would like to quickly move on, and I'll come to the testing point, because again, mortality is low compared to other countries, and move on with the next slide. This we come to the testing, and actually India has ramped up its testing very rapidly in the last fortnight. Okay. It's moved up from about 1,500 tests to close to about 35,000 tests now. Huge improvement. It's jumping up in the last 5 days. But if you look at the next slide, and it's important that despite the fact, you can't be testing the whole of 1.3 billion population of India.
Yeah.
India started off by testing all serious cases, all symptomatic cases. And if you look at symptomatic cases, therefore India's extent of positive detection should have been much, much higher.
Yes.
But India so far has tested, the rate of positives in India has only been 4.4% of the total tested turning positives.
Okay.
And a case in point is Germany, which has the highest testing rate per million population, and yet remains at 8.4%. So many people like you who question India's testing strategy are totally incorrect. My view is that you have to be extremely smart, extremely strategic about your testing, and India has done actually focused on all hotspots and all symptomatic areas, and it's still at 4.4 compared to much larger, much higher levels of positive in other countries.
Okay.
But now we've also pushed for pool sample testing, we've pushed for antibody testing, and many other things.
Let me now come to the other aspect, which is
so
states.
move on
How
to,
states are doing. Yeah, how states are doing.
Yeah.
Clearly, some states are doing better. Some states are doing not so well. What would be an ideal model as far as the states are concerned for you? Which states, according to you, are doing better?
So if I just wanted to tell you that if you look at this analysis of the states, and we've looked at all states here, and there are majority of the states actually account for just 1%, less than 1%. Some states account for between 1 to 2%. But there are actually 8 states which are contributing more than 5%. Some can be contributing 6, some can be contributing 7, but actually the need for the country now is to focus on these 8 states and follow a very hyper-localization strategy, and they contribute to over 5%. These are the key states. And if you look at the trend, and if you move to this trend of weekly growth trends, and this is important, the weekly growth trend, you'd see, for instance, Delhi's fallen for 1 week, but 1 week is not a trend. You need to see this for 2 to 3 weeks. Maharashtra, to my mind, is a source of worry. And we need to really very intensely focus on Maharashtra. And these states should be made the key area of focus, and we need to see their trend for the next 2-3 weeks. If you see a falling graph over 3 weeks, that will then show that they've been able to maintain or manage their hotspots extremely well. But these 8 states are key. And the challenge here is, if you look at this, if you look at the trend analysis on all these high case load states, you need a graph like what Kerala has done.
Yeah.
I mean, Kerala has really turned around the graph. It's showing a decline week after week after week after week. And therefore, what other states need to do is really show a sharp decline over the next 2 to 3 weeks to be able to really contain. This is the real challenge for both the states.
You talked about these 8 states. You talked about Kerala being, the model in terms of how to bend the curve. You talked about Maharashtra. I want to specifically talk because just before you came on this interview, Derek O'Brien of the TMC had this press conference. There's this miscommunication clearly between the central government and the government of Bengal. Bengal seems to be one of the states that has fewer cases. I don't know because if they're testing less or whatever it is, but there seems to be miscommunication over some of these lockdown violations. As the nodal agency, as the head of the nodal agency that liaises between the center and the states, can you throw some light? I mean, what's going on here?
So Zeka, I mean, this is a whole of India approach. This is not about one particular state. I mean, we are fighting this battle against an unknown enemy as one country. And I don't think it's about any particular state. We all have to work in partnership. There can't be any politics. There can't be any divisive trend. We are all together in it to make India win. We've some of the good measures that have been taken in India, early travel advisories, the Janta curfew, many, stopping trains, stopping buses have paid us rich dividend. And that is the way we need to continue for the future as well.
So what is going to happen after the 3rd of May?
The next slide.
What is going to happen after the 3rd of May is something that everybody is curious about. Are we going to see different responses in different parts of the country? Are we going to see a graded easing across the country? What's life going to look like post the 3rd of May?
So, first and foremost, I would like to say that life will not be the same again. I mean, it's very important to understand this, that we are in another world from what it was before coronavirus came in. And therefore, it should be mandatory for us to maintain physical and social distance. It will be mandatory for us to wear masks. It will be mandatory for us to maintain hygiene. All this will be very critical as we go along because there is no vaccine. And I wanted to show you this slide that actually there are 6 Indian companies which are working on a vaccine. And it's very important that, these 6, there are 70 companies across the world, including Oxford, including Gilead, many of them are working. But out of these 6 companies, they need to crack it because important thing is to make vaccine available for the world at very low prices. And India is really the hub for vaccine manufacturing. And if we can crack it, that will be critical. On this point about what we need to do post May 3rd, it's important that we blend this. It's important that we've saved lives so far. But it's very important to save livelihoods as well. And we need a very strategic move away from lockout, which is what the government has done.
Okay, couple of questions
slowly with discipline. We need...
Okay, a couple of questions about what's been happening in the news of late.
I want to stress...
Yeah, just a couple of questions as we wind down. One, oil at zero. I want your comments on that. Could that have a positive rip-off effect for us? Could that revive demand? Oil at $0? It's historic.
So it's amazing, I mean, I had never envisaged in my life that this would ever happen in my lifetime, that we'll have oil at negative prices. But this is unique for India, and I think we need to first, as the government is doing, fill up its strategic reserves. This really shows that there will be no inflation, and therefore the government can boldly take measures. And we were very, very oil dependent, and therefore this is a great plus for Indian economy. I mean, it's a huge, huge positive for Indian economy.
I want to talk about this decision by President Donald Trump of the United States to put a temporary halt on all immigrant visas. The New York Times is now reporting that next could be a halt on all green cards and work visas. As you know, the Indian IT industry depends heavily on H-1B visas. The Times reporting that this could come as early as next week. I want your comments on that. How much should Indian IT be worried about this?
No, I think it's important to understand that the Indian IT company has created more jobs in America, many more jobs in America than what American companies have created. I think they've been truly a great catalyst for America in both driving growth and jobs. And therefore, it needs to be properly analyzed as to the implications of this, that if you temporarily even halt it, America's growth story will be greatly affected. And I think it's important. America is a success story because it has allowed talent from all over the world, the most brilliant people from all over the world to come in. It'll have a huge implication on the meritocracy and the implication on America being a great country in terms of driving growth and progress and innovation and research. All this will be badly hampered in the years to come.
I also want to talk about this controversy around India tweaking its FDI rules over the weekend. You've seen the statement from the Foreign Ministry of China calling it discriminatory. As the points person for the startup ecosystem, you're the government point person for the startup ecosystem in this country. Have our startups expressed concerns to you about this decision? And how would you react to China's comments?
So, Zakir, first and foremost, nowhere does this notification talk about China at all. China has actually invested close to about 8 billion in the last 5 to 6 years. It's invested close to about 4 billion in our startup movement. 18 of our 30 top unicorns have Chinese investment. But, it's not that we are saying that we are putting an end to China's investments at all. That's been wrongly presumed to my mind. What we are merely saying that our valuation of our companies is at low levels because of coronavirus and its implication on the economy, and therefore we don't want any distressed sale of our company or distressed sale of our assets, and therefore they should go through a government approval route. A lot of our investments coming into this country actually used to happen through the government approval route.
All right.
We used to have the FIPB. Every single investment used to go through the FIPB route. So there's nothing wrong in it. Some investments, we'll welcome investment in green fields, we'll welcome investments in many areas, and therefore going through another layer of approval of the government, which can be very expeditiously done in certain areas. If China was to invest in infrastructure, road, railways, or it was to invest in, say, putting up steel plants, I think the country would welcome it. So there shouldn't be any overreaction from China on this issue at all.
And finally, we had a CII panel on the show last night, and singularly and universally, all of them, all industry representatives wanted one thing from government. They wanted an economic relief package. They wanted it to be of scale, not the kind that the RBI released last week, 50,000 crore plus 50,000 crore. By when can we expect an eco-relief package, and what scale are we looking at?
Zaka, the government took early measures to ensure that the welfare of our people who are impacted is taken care of through the 1.70 crore package, 1.70 lakh crore worth of package. The RBI has come out with two different packages by slashing its CRR, its reserve repo, its repo rate, and many other measures it's taken to provide greater liquidity. The government is at a very detailed level of consideration on how it can help its MSMEs and its companies, and how to provide greater impact through a fiscal mechanism, and I think that's important. I think detailed work is being undertaken by the Finance Ministry, and I think they will soon be coming out with it after detailed deliberations on this.
All right. The IMF finally saying 1.9% is going to be India's growth. Where do you stand? Has Niti Aayog done some surveys, as you do, to estimate what FY20 is going to look like for India?
So Zaka, this, a lot is dependent on how the global scenario and how the coronavirus fans out in the days to come. If we were to say that this is going to fully conclude on May 3rd, you'll have one scenario of growth. If we are to get it into a slowly staggered and slow opening up of our industry, of our services sector, then it'll have a larger impact. But if you were to get corona back, and God forbid it doesn't ever come back to India, but if that happens, God forbid, during the winter season, then you'll have a much larger impact. So I think we are in a world of uncertainty, and I think it'll be even the best of economists who will not be able to predict what the scenario will be like. But we only hope that we have positive growth this year and we are able to come out. But it would require us a lot of hand-holding of the government and of the central bank with the private sector of India, and that is critical to my mind.
All right, Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO Niti Aayog, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18 with your gamut of thoughts and perspectives on all those issues, from the corona curve in India, the testing, the contact tracing. He's spread his areas of knowledge on all of those areas and spoken to us. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break here on the program. When we come back, news and updates continue right here on CNN News 18. It's your #1 destination for all news related to corona.